Welcome everyone to Aspiring Mentors March 2024 second workshop part 2. In this video, I'll be discussing on how to write your ERAS CV. So your ERAS CV, this is how your ERAS CV going to be summarized at the end. So they won't give you the format like this first. They will ask you certain questions. So they will ask for your name, your pronoun, your AMC ID, your mailing address, your permanent mailing address. And then once you enter every information that you're asked, it's going to populate like this. So your name is going to be here, your AMC ID and your pronouns are going to be mentioned here. Then you can mention your present mailing address and permanent mailing address. The next section is going to be about your medical education. You have to mention your college and also the country you took you got your medical education, the duration and the type of degree that you got, and the date that you got your medical degree. So this education is if you have any post-grad educations, could be specialty, MPH or something. If you have anything, you can mention it here. So the next section is about membership in honorary or professional societies. So usually most of IMGs won't have this, the Alpha Omega chapter at my school or good humanitarian honor society. So usually US medical grads will have this society or membership in their specific medical schools. So if you have them, that's okay. But if not, so majority of IMGs won't have this. The other one is if you are if you are a member of other societies, you can mention them here. The other one is if you have any medical school awards, and so you're going to mention the name of the award, the date, and the year that you received the award. And the other one, certification in licensure. Then you can mention your medical license and the dates you received your medical license and more. So the next part of your experience is going to be your volunteer experience. So when you mention a volunteer experience, so the first one is going to be the duration. So as I mentioned here, you have to mention the duration. The other one is the name of the organization. And then lastly, you can mention the role in that certain organization. So if you mentioned as a physician or not, you can mention it here since it's going to be your volunteer experience. You can mention whatever role you took there, and then the average hours that you spent in that certain organization should be mentioned here. So what I would advise everyone is that whenever you mention a certain experience or volunteer experience or work experience, I would advise you to make it in a bullet point and not make it maybe in a paragraph, because a person, again, it might look like your personal statement. It might look like so tiresome for a person to read your CV. So you should just make points like this. And then at the same time, you shouldn't mention, I was doing this, I was doing that, but make it in an action verb and just say managed a team of something, recruit something, participated something. So you should make it like, it should be inviting, and then it should go straight to the chase, and just, it shouldn't be, something, a long sentence to reach to what you did. So you can say, in my role in certain organization, I was so humbled to work with this, and then I was able to manage. So in order for the reader to see my role, the person should read the whole sentence and reach to that place where I started to mention how I managed that. So you should mention here that you should say, I managed something, I recruited something, participated something like that. Okay. So the other one is that, so if you have any volunteering, you can mention them, and don't forget to mention the hours. So you shouldn't be mentioning crazy hours, because when you are volunteering, if you are doing that full time, that's okay. But if not, if you're not doing it as you shouldn't just make things up and then just say, I did that to fill up your gap. But if you actually did that in a week, you should mention that. So the next section is going to be your work experience. Again, your work experience is going to include the duration is going to mention here, then the name of the organization, the location of the clinic or any company you worked, and your role in that certain work environment. And then at the same time, the name of your supervisor is going to be also mentioned here. And again, the hours that you worked will be mentioned here. So as I mentioned, so you can put it like this in a bullet point, and then start with action verbs, then like recorded, followed, assessed, helped, conducted, and something like that. And then some people say you should just write 2 or 3 lines, or you shouldn't make it that long, or some people may say you should make it extra long or something. But I would advise you, if you actually did this, you should mention them. Even if it seems long, you can see how long this was. This was one of my experiences, but I mentioned around like 1, 2, 3, 4, almost more than 10 or 11 points. So if I actually did that, I want to mention that, because this is the only time I can, highlight on my experiences. I might not be able to get and talk to the physicians prior to my application. So this is how they're going to meet me first. So this is how they're going to see what I actually did. So you shouldn't shy away to mention whatever you did here. You shouldn't hide or condense and then see, you should mention every single thing that you did, and you shouldn't actually make it redundant with your other experiences also. Okay, so the next one is if you have any current or prior training. So if you are currently a resident in your home countries, you can mention it. Or if you are in a sort of, in any form of training, let's say if you are doing your MPH now, or if you're doing another thing, and that means if you are training in a certain facility, you should mention it. And also anything other than your ND that you did following your graduation, you can mention it here. So the other one is your publications. So your publications could be your articles or abstracts that were published or submitted, or just abstracts only that, or if you presented any oral presentations or more, you're going to put it here. So the name of the authors will be mentioned, the title and the type of article is going to be mentioned, and date of publication, and the DOI number is also going to be mentioned here. But they will just tell you the format. You're going to enter answers to the questions that they ask, and then after that, it will just repopulate it with a similar format, such as with everyone. So you shouldn't worry about the format, how you write it, because they will definitely guide you here on what to do. So the other one is hobbies and interests. So your hobbies and interests are going to be your icebreakers in almost in all of your interviews most of the time, because they don't know you, you don't know them, and then they might not jump on to say, tell me about yourself. What did you do, or what did you do here or not? They might, try to break the ice or the tension there. So you mentioned you like football. So which is your favorite team? And then, so mine is this. So that's how they start. And after that, they would go ahead and just jump to tell me about yourself or something like that. But first, most of them ask you about your hobbies. So when you mention your hobbies again, put it like a bullet point, or maybe like a short paragraph or a bullet point. But let's say you want to play football, and also at the same time, you like watching football. So you shouldn't mention, I like watching football, I like playing football, I like coaching football, or something like that. You should just, condense them. And then if you are going to mention football, I'm interested in football. And then you can say like, I sometimes play and watch, and I enjoy that. If you enjoy like genuinely spending time with your family, mention it. If you enjoy cooking or not. But again, don't lie and just say, I like to play, for example, I like to play guitar. And then what if they have a guitar in the program when you join them, or when you go to visit the place, and then they ask you to play? And then that's going to show them that you lied not only on your hobbies. They might think that you made up the whole application. So you shouldn't lie with your hobbies and interests, but you should also try to make it as interesting or as unique as possible. So the other one is your the language section. So they will give you the proficiency scales. If you have, let's say for me, Amharic was my native language. So I chose native or functionally native. That means I can converse easily, accurately in all types of situations. And native speakers, including the highly educated, may think I am a native speaker too. But for my English, this is not my first language, so I can speak accurately. I can understand others speak accurately, but native speakers, they also have no problem understanding me, but they would think that I'm not a native speaker. So you should be honest with this, and then you shouldn't just make it advanced, or if you are, that's good, but if not, you shouldn't make it like native or something, and then when they talk to you, they would pick up on your accent, or they would think that you're not a native speaker. So try to be honest, and then again, if you have other more languages, add them, and then don't lie again. But when you add them, you should also mention the level of your language proficiency here. So the last thing is that if you have any awards or accomplishments, you can mention them here. So if you were given certain awards, so you, honestly speaking, if you have maybe, for example, if you were awarded for something that you did in your primary school or high school, it might not be important. But again, if it was something that, that you got, and then that if it was something that inspired you to join medicine, maybe add them. So for me, I started volunteering when I was 12 years old at a Children's Heart Hospital. So I got a certificate out of it maybe like many years ago. But I still added it here because it was something that inspired me to further continue and pursue medicine or something like that. If it's something like that, even if it was remote, you can add them, but don't just add everything or anything that you are awarded. So you should be cautious with that. So lastly, what you should avoid when you're writing your your ERAS CV is that you should not have an inconsistent format. That means on one of your work experience, you might jot down like bullet points. On the other one, you might do, I did this, I did that in a certain paragraph, and then go back to your bullets, or maybe something inconsistent. You should be cautious with that. So for me, I would advise you to do it in a bullet, but if you think paragraphs are also good for you, if you start with, describing your experience in a paragraph, you should continue the whole thing with a paragraph format. So you should be cautious with that. The other thing is you should definitely watch and try to avoid spelling errors. So you should start as soon as ERAS is opened. You can buy your token and then start to build your CV, and you shouldn't submit it. So once you're doing that, you have to again and again and again try to use different spelling format, correctors such as Grammarly or other softwares, and you can just send them to your friends or more, and just see with if you have any spelling errors, because this is the least you could do and the most error that you can do, and it's not going to be attractive for the reader also. The other thing is that you should not mix up dates. So for example, you should, if you start writing one of your experiences and then jump to another year, because it should have this chronological order, right? It should not, make your reader think that you have huge gaps at the same time, and then you go back and then mention an experience which was 2 or 3 years before the experience that you mentioned. So it shouldn't be, here and there. So you should have this chronological order. The other one is you should not, like as I mentioned earlier, you should not oversimplify your CV and just mention 2 or 3 points, because as IMG especially, we have done a lot. We have a lot of experience, even as medical students, let alone as a medical doctor after graduation. So you should not undermine, you should mention every experience that you think is relevant on your CV. The other one is again, don't copy other people's CV. It's going to be redundant, and it's going to, it's going to be detected with the reader. The other ones, don't lie and add experience just to fill your gap years, because sometimes we might have huge gap years and we would try to add certain, let's say, for example, you might add, I volunteered here or not. So they're going to ask you, and then they're going to pick up on your change of tone or the way you speak when you are making some things up. So if you actually did that experience or volunteering, you will be passionate when you explain what you did here and there. So you should never lie to fill your gaps. The other one is you should not copy the same description for every work experience. Let's say you worked in a hospital A, again, you also worked in hospital B. So let's say if you treated patients with hypertension, DM, and then if you utilized the AMR again and again, you should not, even if you did it here, you should not copy and paste for every hospital or for every university that you worked. you should try to, because, you know, in reality, the experience that you get from a certain place is not going to be similar with another hospital. So you should try to see, if you work in an outpatient, you should mention that. Again, in inpatient, you should mention that. Emergency, you should mention that. You shouldn't just say, I treated patients, and just generalize that. You should mention, I treated patients in an inpatient, because it would show that you're versatile. You're not mainly, you know, a primary care physician who's going to mainly handle outpatient, or you shouldn't make them think that you are mainly interested in the hospitalist route and just think about inpatient. So since as a resident, you're going to work in different parts of the hospital, you should mention that you have also experience working in different parts of the hospital, be it inpatient, outpatient, and more. In the ICU, if you have done any procedures, you should mention them here. Be it supervised or unsupervised, you can mention that again. So yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it. So the floor is now open for questions. So let me see. I think we have some questions. Okay, the first question is that, do you think that the first paragraph should say why you are picking that specialty? Can it be written in another paragraph? Yes. So I would advise you to include whatever maybe, like for me, I included what interested me, or what made me choose medicine to begin with. So I had certain personal experience, so I mentioned that. I also mentioned some volunteering experience that I did as a kid, maybe that further inspired me to join medicine. So after that, in my second paragraph, that's when I mentioned, so I told the story. So when I was in high school or something, I did this, I did that. And then, you know, doing that made me choose why to join medical school. But after that, in the second and third paragraph, I further elaborated why I wanted to choose internal medicine per se. So yeah, I would advise you maybe to start why you chose your a certain specialty on the second paragraph probably, and then try to further elaborate that on the third, and conclude that in the last paragraph. So yeah, I would advise you to start in the second paragraph, but this is what worked for me. You should also ask other mentors. And also, if you think you should mention why you chose internal medicine or what certain specialty in your first paragraph, you can also include that, but usually it's better to, you know, broaden it in the middle paragraphs. Okay, the next one. Okay, so what's the standard font size in personal statement? I think it was 12 or 11, but I'm not sure, but you can find it also in their, I think in their ERAS page also, they have these specifications just like the pictures, but I think it was around 12, I'm not sure. Okay, the next question, if one specialty in OBGYN or surgery and for known reason want to pursue internal medicine or family medicine, how do we convince the program director? Okay, so yeah, if you were practicing as a different specialty, so for this instance, if you were an OBGYN or surgical physician in your home country, you can mention that. So there are so many surgeons that come here and then join internal medicine or family medicine. So you can say, I've been practicing there, but even if I was practicing or performing surgeries or delivering babies, I was still, you know, drawn to the medical aspect of that specialty, because as a surgeon, I know you're treating and performing surgeries, or as an OBGYN, you are delivering babies or taking care of pregnant moms or any female reproductive health. But still, every patient will come to you, maybe, let's say, pregnancy plus hypertension, pregnancy plus DM, surgery, let's say coli plus diabetes or something like that. So whenever I was treating or performing surgeries or taking care of pregnant mothers, I was still drawn to the medical aspect of their presentation. So you can mention that. So you can't, you know, like you can't hide that you are doing surgery or OBGYN or other specialty in your hometown, because you are going to upload the documents that you had maybe like post-graduation specialties or something like that. So you shouldn't hide the fact that you chose that specialty back at home, but you can further elaborate that I was still drawn to the medical aspect of the surgery or medical aspect of OBGYN. And also for family medicine, especially, people usually use a catchy line where you want to follow patients from birth until death, right? So like, so from birth, I want, even if I delivered the babies, I wanted to see their care. Also, I didn't want to send them to as a pediatrician or as a family medicine physician, but I wanted to further, follow them through their adult years, and also in their geriatrics age. So that's how you try to, incorporate your past experience and then with what you pursue to join later on. Okay. So the next question was, can you give examples of politics that should not be mentioned in the personal statement? If we have been involved in advocacy activities, those are politic related. So I want to make sure not to mention in a bad way. So, so this is when, you should update yourselves and try to, see the news, or because there are different controversial issues with certain like present wars going on in different parts of the world. And then if you ask people, different people will have different opinions, but you can mention, I mean, like if that's what pursued you to pursue medicine or to pursue a certain specialty, you can mention it, but when you mention it, you shouldn't maybe be specific. So I was supporting this certain political entity, or I was supporting that certain political entity. And, you shouldn't disregard others' opinions, but you can say, this is when I started to experience my advocacy skills, and I intend to, further advocate for my patient, to become advocate for my patients and more. And then at the same time, you can also mention, if you're going to mention political disparities, you can mention that you're going to be impartial when you're treating your patients or something. So you will not be, what can I mean? So you will not be, treating patients with a certain political belief that as you differently with person who is not going to have who is going to have a different personal political know-how, or something like that, something different from you. So they want you to know, they want to see that you're impartial to different political beliefs, religious beliefs, or maybe like if you are going to be OBGYN, you shouldn't be, partial or impartial for different rules such as abortion or something like that. So you should be cautious when you are mentioning these things. If it's something that inspired you, okay, fine. But if not, try to avoid mentioning exactly which political parties you are supporting or something like that, but rather focus on your advocacy skills per se. Okay, next question. Okay. Okay, so if you are applying to OBGYN and you are pro-abortion, you might also want to research the program view. Yes, exactly. So yeah, certain programs might mention about their instances. So you can mention, so certain things like if they are pro-abortion or not, but still you never know. The person who is going to interview might not be pro-abortion or might not perform abortion. So you should still be cautious on that also. Okay, so the next one is, which work experience do we write, like the current one or 2 or 3 work experience we had after graduation? Also, you should write everything. So every work experience should be mentioned. As long as you think it supports your application, you shouldn't leave out any experience, but try to make it in a chronological order. So let's say right after graduation, you joined a certain company or hospital, you should start with that and then build up with the timeline until your current job. Okay, the other one is it appropriate to include war experience leading to choose medicine? I mean, yeah, you should, if that's something that inspired you, that's going to be your story. When you mention that, you shouldn't be, mentioning how impartial you were or how you were supporting a certain political or a certain, some things that happen, political disparities that happen in the war, but you can mention your discipline as a soldier, or the things that you saw, the hierarchies, the teamwork or the discipline that you saw when you were like participating or when you were working as a soldier that led you to choose, you know, a medicine or something, or if you were a victim and if you saw patients who were lacking emergency care or something like that, that's going to be a good personal assessment for you. But whenever you choose these topics, you should be cautious on your personal views, especially war on politics or religion for that for that matter. So the other one is I wanted to know about how our year of graduation plays role in the match process if we have more than 5 years. So yeah, many applicants, especially many IMGs, have more year of graduation more than 5 years. But on your personal statement and also on your CV, you can mention, because the more you have years after graduation, and if you don't have gaps, the more you're going to have things to say on your personal statement or experiences to share on your CV. So you should use that to your advantage and highlight on the things that you did. And then also try to take on leadership roles, try to take on volunteering, teaching, volunteering in clinics, research. So you can just show them that you're not only just one side. You should you're not going to be only a clinician for them. You can be an academic fellow or you can be a research fellow for them. So you can just mention whatever you did after 5 years, like after graduation. So the more years you have, this is going to be our only advantage to highlight what we did as maybe like all the grads, right? Anything above 5 years. So this is where you shine and then get more experience, because our CVs are going to be really packed with those experiences. Okay, so the other question is that, can we mention specific subspecialty we're interested in future, like IM or HEMONC? Yeah, so at the last paragraph, at the first paragraph, you can touch on if you have any future aspirations, but again, you should be cautious, because let's say you are applying to a community program or to a place where they don't have subspecialty trainings or more. So if you are mainly thinking about, so if that's the only thing that you look forward to joining their program or joining internal medicine per se, it might just lead them to think that you might prefer other programs which have, of course, everyone prefers programs with fellowship opportunities, but you shouldn't make it that obvious. But when you mention that you aspire to become maybe like HEMONC physician, you should mention that as one of your aspirations, but you should say that I'm looking forward to explore the different specialties or subspecialties in internal medicine. Especially, I aspire to become a physician that's special, or HEMONC subspecialist or something, subspecialty training. So, but when you are mentioning a certain subspecialty, you should just let them know that you are interested and you'll be also interested in other specialties like cardiology, GI, or something. But for now, that's so early on. But for now, you're going to focus on the HEMONC, or like that's what you aspire. But things might change, right? So when they ask you, you can, on your interviews, you can further say that I'm interested to see, because some of them ask you, so what do you see yourself in the coming 5 years as a fellow or as a hospitalist or as a primary care physician or more? Sometimes they ask you that. When they ask you, you should be, you shouldn't just say, no, I'm looking forward to be a HEMONC only, like, because you have to know that you should give like every specialty a chance. They should know that you will be also interested in other specialties and you'll not be, mainly focused on HEMONC or other specialties. So you should be cautious on that, but definitely you can include it in your first or last paragraph in your conclusion part. Okay, the other one is mentoring, is mentioning voluntary, in mentioning voluntary, is it necessary to upload a letter or something as a proof you did voluntary there? So normally they don't ask that, but if they do, maybe like some of them, I don't know, for me, nobody asked me, but I was, ready to show them my certificates, or I was able to, to reach out to people I was volunteering, the place I was volunteering at. So you can prepare that, but usually they don't ask that, especially for volunteering. But for work experiences, you're going to mention your supervisors or whatnot. They might try to reach out to them. and, you know, just to cross-check, but they might not do that for everyone. Okay, so if you have time, can you tell us about which SFMG pathways we should pick, especially Ethiopian IMGs? So I'm trying, you know, so for me, I chose pathway 1 because as graduates, wherever you are, if you are a medical school graduate, you can choose and have a license to practice in your individual hometown or home country. You can choose pathway 1. But I think let me do my research further on the other pathways also, and then we can incorporate that maybe next week for our third workshop. Okay. Okay, the next one is, okay, can you mention as leadership experience or volunteer experience if you had one in medical school as Christian student fellowship or religious? Yeah, so I mean, this is going to highlight that you were working as a leader or you were showing a leadership skill. But when you are mentioning that, you shouldn't mention that, oh, I did that because of, you know, because I am the follower of a Christian religion, or I wanted to treat only Christian patients or only Muslim patients or not. You should mention, you should highlight that you work there because you're going to mention it as a work experience. But at the same time, after you mention that, you should mainly focus on how you exercised your leadership roles or something like that. So that means you can mention it because that is going to be your work experience. But at the same time, it will definitely show that you're impartial and you're going to treat anybody despite of their religious background. But here, specifically for this experience, you chose a leadership role, and you can mention how you exercised your leadership roles there. Okay, another question. So other than volunteering in gap years, is raising kids, family ties, and pursuing USMLE steps can add up or no? So I think, okay, so that's going to be on your, when you come to your ERAS application. So I think I might add that for your, I think next week. So when you do your ERAS application, there's another question here that's going to be reason for leaving your job. Let's say, for example, if this was one program that I worked at, and if this was another hospital that I worked at, right? So in between, if there are gaps or something, or even if there are no gaps, even if I started the next day, they are going to ask you reason why you left the first job. So let's say you were working at a hospital, you became pregnant and you wanted to take care of your kids at home, or you wanted to further work on your USMLE exams, right? So you can mention it here, the reason why you left your job or why you had a gap. There's going to be another section on your ERAS application separately, which is going to ask you reason for leaving your job or something like that. So that's going to be, that's when you can mention, I left my job to, you know, to raise my kids or something. I mean, it's going to be understandable because even if they have kids or not, or raising family, I mean, taking care of families, it's totally like universally understandable. But when you mention that, you shouldn't mention maybe like, even if you mention there's going to be, even if there's going to be a huge gap, you can mention whatever you did there. Maybe you can mention that you were, okay, so you were reading for step exams, but you shouldn't again mention a huge gap for that you took to read for your step exams, because people do it where they're working or something. So they might think that you're making an excuse or something like that. But raising kids or family ties or something, if it's something that you are not able to, you know, avoid, or you are not able to find support for that, so you can be honest and just talk about it. But you can say that while I was doing that, you can say I was further maybe embracing or working on my research, or volunteering somewhere online, or I was looking for that. And then after that, when you get that experience, you can mention after searching while I was raising my kids, I got this opportunity to work here, to shadow somebody or something. So as much as possible, if it's possible, and if you don't have any gaps already, you should avoid that. But if you already have gaps while you are raising kids or taking care of your family members, and if you didn't have any support, you shouldn't lie about that, but you should mention that. But again, highlight on the other experiences that you actually had before and after that. So it's not going to be, you know, you can change your red flags and just twist it and then let them know what you learned from that. So do you guys have any more questions or, okay, you're welcome. So if not, we can wrap up. I think our session was long again. I tried to make it as short as possible, but since I'm planning to, condense all the things I wanted to tell you guys in few webinars, so that's why I think it's long. I think it's around like 11, 17. So yeah. So thank you guys, everyone, for joining. And if you have any questions, you can totally, text me directly, or you can mention it in your group chat. Again, utilize your team chat as much as possible. Those people are going to be your friends and your support system. And then, yeah. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Have a good night, and see you next week, hopefully. Okay, bye.